Meeting is now live streaming. Yes. If you're
Yay.
out there watching, welcome to my page. I am Jayne Ann Krentz. Happy to
I'm
have you.
I'm Agatha Andrews. Thank you for having me.
Agatha Andrews is my guest today, and I'm thrilled. I'm so excited because she's going to talk to us about, yes, the Gothic, which is hands down my favorite combination of romance and suspense. And it's just, for me, the perfect book. So I'm really excited. And Agatha is our expert on the subject. So before we get into the books you have to recommend, tell us a little bit how you got here. How did, and then tell us how to find you online, because everybody who's watching this is going to want to know.
Well, I think my love of Gothic probably started with that girl with the green ribbon story when we're little, right? We all remember that story, but it evolved and then I became a librarian and I really got to nurture that because I had to read books to recommend to my patrons. And a lot of times when it's students, especially in high school, they're kind of morose little creatures looking for looking for stories that reflect their feelings, and very often they're Gothic. And so I really enjoyed that. And once I stopped being a full-time librarian, I did that for almost 15 years. I wanted to find a way to kind of still do that work, recommend books, and really connect books to readers. That's always been so important to me. And so I started She Wore Black as a way to extend that work I was doing there. But this time I get to to just revel in my favorite genre.
Well, tell us about, before we launch into that, tell us about where to find you online with She
Okay.
Wore Black. Yeah.
So She Wore Black is a podcast that you can find on Apple and Spotify or wherever you get your podcasts. I do have a website, sheworeblackpodcast.com, and there you will find not just show notes, but you'll also find links to my bookshop and some other things that I have, all of which are basically still connecting you to the readers to books. That's always ultimately the goal. So sheworeblackpodcast.com. I'm on Instagram mostly, but I'm also on Threads. I exist on Twitter, but not really.
Nope, I don't think anybody does.
So I'm on Facebook also. So you can find me here on Facebook.
Okay. And then before we take the next jump, let's try and define Gothic. Have you ever tried to do that? I've
Always.
yeah, I've played with it too. So what I've got is it needs that isolated location.
Yeah.
Can't pick up the phone somehow. And a woman who's trapped in that location can't escape for whatever good reason. And the big house. There's always a big house or something equivalent. Maybe a small town sometimes will work, but it has to be that claustrophobic kind of feeling. And then there's an element of madness.
Yeah.
There's
You dabble in that for sure.
yeah.
Well, as an only child, I think that's one of the reasons why I loved Gothic so much. And I'm a Gen X only child, so I was by myself all the time, you know, and so I had a lot of time to spend in my own head, and that's what a lot of Gothic characters do is they're so isolated, they spend a lot of time in their head. That's where sometimes the question of madness comes in, um or question of paranoia, something going on
Yeah.
around you and you're trying to resolve that. Usually there's a here's one of my favorites, family secrets are
Yes.
I
Yes.
love some family secrets. But yeah, isolated settings lend really well to putting that character in their own head. So sometimes it could be because they're trapped by a storm. It can be in the woods. It could be in a coastal setting. Either way, as long as those characters are isolated in some way. And sometimes we find, and I'm sure you found this too, Jayne, that it's interesting when a writer can do this, not necessarily with physical isolation from other people, but maybe emotional isolation. That can still be Gothic because it's still internal, these stories, and they're still trying to uncover the root of whether it's an external or internal battle. It's really interesting. So all
I
the
like I
fun
like
things.
that's a good angle, the internal angle. There's there's just that sense that the danger is inside, not outside.
Sometimes because a ghost, I mean, if it's a
Oh, yeah,
ghost,
yeah,
yeah, a ghost can be causing problems. So
yeah. I was thinking inside the house, as
yeah.
opposed to say bad guys coming in from outside and
Mm.
like with guns and blazing and stuff like
Oh
that.
no, I think ghosts like in the trees outside or something. I mean, it's still a ghost, it's still and he's still lurking, whatever it is.
He's got
Um,
the windows.
yeah. They want inside if they're not in there already. So yeah, it's just a lot of fun to explore that. And I spend most of my time on the show exploring those things, but sometimes I love a good genre blend. I love romantic suspense because it plays with gothic, but then it also plays with elements of romance. I love gothic romance. I love sometimes I'll lean more into horror, so sometimes it might be vampires or things like that that you'll find on the show. But a lot of times that's because at the root of these stories, they're still gothic. Like even if gothic is blending with other things, I just find it really interesting how many people are drawn to it and include it, whether or not that's the entire point of their novel. They still love those things about gothic and include them.
Well, I have sort of found myself interested in a kind of something. I may have been there all along, but I just have recently discovered in the past couple of years, horror light. It's not that old-fashioned kind of horror that's totally supernatural and evil, comes from an evil place. But I'm thinking more like A House with Good Bones.
I love that book so much.
Yeah, it's to me that's a perfect example of horror light. I don't
Yeah.
know, and
I
I
have
really
my
like it.
last two recommendations will kind of fall into that category. And that doesn't what I would love listeners or readers to know is that you and I are not talking about fluff necessarily. What we're talking about is things maybe with a sense of humor or things that have elements of horror, but they're not, a lot of people will think like Freddy Krueger and the,
Yeah,
slasher
no,
films of the 80s. And that's not what it is anymore anyway.
yeah,
Horror has evolved so much. And while those are definitely fun stories for a lot of people, we're exploring. One of the wonderful things about horror and gothic is that they explore so many things that never stop being relevant. Body autonomy, agency, like all of these things are still really important. And the kind of horror you're talking about does a really great job. I have two titles that I thought would appeal to some of your listeners when you told me that you would be interested in having some of those things today. So
let's
very
get
good books.
started.
Yeah,
Let's get
good books,
started.
good writing all the way around. So I'm very excited.
Ah, go for it.
Oh, okay. Well, I have copies of the books for most of these, but not all of them. But the first one I do, and I don't know, it may look backwards on your screen, but this is called A
No,
Rose by Any Other Name. Oh, it looks good. Okay,
it
good.
looks good. Yeah. Thanks
A,
to Zoom, the wonders of Zoom.
A Rose by Any Other Name by Mary McMinn. Now, your readers may know her from the Book of Gothel. The Book of Gothel was her book where she retold Rapunzel from the point of view of the witch in the story. And she likes a good witch retelling because she tackles the stories of Shakespeare's sonnets as told from the point of view of the Dark Lady in the sonnets.
Ah,
And so she's actually my next interview. I would have had her on this week, but I was having technical difficulties and for the first time ever in my history. And I was, but poor Mary, is very cooperative and helpful. But yeah, so she'll be on to talk about this. And I do want to let people know that I don't have spoilers. We get some really good questions going, but we definitely don't spoil it. The whole point for me is to try to get you to want to read it. So I don't want to ruin it for you.
and her name is
Mary McMinn,
Mary McMinn. Got it. Okay.
McMyne, just in case anybody's listening. And like I said, if you like a good witch retelling, she also did that Book of Gothel. So, just keep that in mind. See, I got to put them in a stack somewhere. um, do you want me to just go
Yeah,
right on into the
just keep
next?
going.
Okay. Listen, I could do this all day. So thank you for letting me do it for a little bit. The next one I have is An Academy for Liars by Alexis Henderson. So I don't know if you can see that
Yep.
cover.
Yep.
There wants
Looks
you
good.
to go. Um, but this is Alexis Henderson. You guys may know from, and I'll hold up her previous novels. Her first one was Year of the Witching, which has a very kind of Salem feel, but it takes place in a mythical version of that town called Bethel. So very kind of puritanical setting. And then the other one that she's known for is House of Hunger, which is kind of a vampiric story with a very Elizabeth Bathory vibe to it. So her next one is a dark academia, and I am
I
so
like
excited about it.
I like those. I don't know why, but I like them.
Right? There's just something, it's such a cool, like there's endless possibilities of what you can do in a school, right? And especially a collegiate level. So this one, I'll read it if you want. A student will find that the hardest lessons sometimes come from outside the classroom in this stunning dark academia novel. So what happens here is that it's a school that's magical and it's in her native Savannah, Georgia. That's where she's from. So if you're interested in dark academia and like Savannah,
And
you're
who
in
is
for a
it?
good. I know. Like it has all the good things, right? And then she's this beautiful writer. Her books are amazing. And I mean, aside from the fact that she herself is an enchanting author, her books are just so good. Like you cannot stop turning the page. But there's of course a professor there that is mysterious. You have to have one of those. It's a lush, moss-draped campus. I mean, there's magic, I mean, what wouldn't you love about this, right? So, an Academy for Liars, that's Alexis Henderson. You guys should really follow her on Instagram and her socials so that you can keep up with. She's going to be doing some fun things surrounding this book. So, I love
Put it on
Alexis.
the list here.
She's been on the show. So if y'all are interested in hearing an interview with her, she did a great interview for her last book. She'll be back on too in the fall.
Okay.
So The Madness by Dawn Kurtig. Oh, I'm sorry, Kurtigich. I think that's the name. Have you heard of this one yet, Jane?
No, no, the madness.
Yes. Okay. With one unexpected email from her estranged best friend, Lucy, Mina Murray's carefully curated life is turned upside down. So if you have Lucy and Mina in a story, you know what this means.
It took me a minute, but yeah, I get it. Okay, got
We got some Dracula going on, right? Leaving behind her psychiatric practice in London, along with her routine and the calm it brings, she returns to the windswept shores of Wales.
it.
I know. Faced with everything she's left behind, she soon discovers that Lucy's symptoms mirror those of her mysterious amnesiac patient hundreds of miles away. Um, there's more, of course, in the description, but I would definitely add this to your Goodreads. Your friend and mine, Paulette Kennedy, has blurbed this, loves it dearly. And
Got it.
I'm very excited about this. I love a good Dracula retelling, and I'm always just so interested in all the creative ways that people have found to retell that story. Why do you think that is that people love Dracula so much?
I think it's that ultimate evil, and yet it's attractive.
It's alluring, isn't it? It's why are we so interested?
I think it goes back to, honest to God, it goes back to Satan.
Yeah,
Why is Satan fascinating? Because you sort of want to save him.
I know. What is it? Why, and this idea of like, well, because he was also supposed to be the most beautiful, right? The most
Yeah.
beautiful angel. And then that's also kind of true of like our beautiful monsters. We're interested, right? I mean, he had these wives, a big castle. Maybe he's just misunderstood. Like we all kinds of reasons.
It's our deep down need for redemption.
I think you're right. I
There's
think you're
something
right.
there that we value that, and we long for redemption for ourselves and for others,
I
ultimately.
think what she's trying to do, and what Gwendolyn Keist has also done recently, this is why I'm so interested in what Gothic has been doing these days, is they're trying to reclaim the agency that he took from these characters. Because Gwendolyn Keist wrote Reluctant Immortals, where they're still living, those characters. Um, and of course, those Dracula. And they're trying to reclaim agency that was taken from them. And I think that this is what I love about how there's always a new way to retell these stories. Yeah.
Yes, and interesting that women authors are the ones who are doing the retelling for the most part.
On these, absolutely. Well, we have so much to say on those things. And what's wild, Jane, is that someone out there is going to do a totally new way that's going to blow our mind in a year or two. Like there's always going to be something new, and it's an old story, Like, I don't know if you know Mimi Matthews, but she did a Jane Eyre retelling, but meshed with Dracula.
Ah,
And she did like a reverse, it was a gender flip. So what combined with Dracula, the story worked really, really well. It was wild. And I'm like, there's always some new way to visit these stories.
uh,
So
well, because the archetypes are in them. That's where we
yeah,
find, yeah.
love it. Well, the next book I wanted to talk about is actually something that was on your Facebook Live yesterday from your bookseller. He was talking about it, and it is by B.R. Myers. Now, I don't have the arc for it, but I have her previous book, which is the award-winning A Dreadful Splendor. And she knows how to have fun with Gothic. This is a good time.
Okay.
Has all the Gothic stuff, she writes all the Gothic goodies, but you just have so much fun when you're reading her books. The Third Wife of Faraday House, which I don't know if you remember him talking about
Yes,
yesterday.
yes.
um but let's see, A Dreadful Splendor, little, that's the author. um she has two brides. Okay, this is one of the reasons why I wanted to talk about it, because my gosh, I love stories with ghost brides, or, brides that have just gotten married and they're entering a house, very Rebecca style, you know. And I love that. So let's see, featuring two brides who must band together to unravel the ghostly secrets at the heart of a crumbling island manor. And what I love about this, aside from the fact that it's historical, it's 1816, is that the woman who is the third bride of this man goes into the house only to discover that the second bride is actually not dead. So they kind of work together to get to the bottom of all the secrets and all the wickedness that's been going on in the house. And it's a coastal setting, which is my very favorite. And I love B.R. Myers. She's just so fun. She revels. I feel like when you're reading her work, it's that you probably know exactly what I'm talking about, where you feel like the author had the best time writing it.
It's
That's what her books do. And so I'm just very, very excited about The Third Wife of Faraday House. That one comes out August 20th. So that one's not out yet. And The Academy Flyers, the one I was talking about, was is out in September. The Madness is out in August. The first one I talked about, A Rose by Any Other Name, that's already out. That came out last week. So I
okay.
wrote all that down just to let readers know. So I need to try to remember to say that with each one.
Time to request them at the library or pre-order.
Yes, pre-orders, requests at the library. As a former librarian, I know all too well how valuable that is, because it helps you decide, like, well, what are the people going to want to read? And so it's really important to do that there too. Um, if you're ready for the next one, I've got a good one.
Yeah.
Berkeley every once in a while does these call outs, where you can just bypass needing an agent and go straight to Berkeley, and they pulled this incredible story. My friend Rachel Harrison, who's another author I have, that'll be coming up, was talking about how wonderful this is. And then ever since then, I've just seen nothing but amazing things about this. So I'm really excited. This is a Southern Gothic in the 1960s. So that's real exciting. Um, in this Southern Gothic horror debut, a young Black woman abandons her life in 1960s Chicago for a position with a mysterious family in New Orleans. Love it already. Only to discover the dark truth. They're under a curse and they think she can break it.
Oh.
I know, right? How would you not want to read this? And so in fall of 1962, 27-year-old Gemma Barker is desperate to escape her life in Chicago and the spirits she can see. When she receives a job offer from the Duchamp family in New Orleans, it's a chance to start over. But Gemma discovers that the Duchamp family isn't what it seems. And isn't that always the way, Jane?
It just happens over and over again.
I know. I'm very, very excited about this, but this actually gets to the root of a lot of like colorism as well. I mean, not just racism, but colorism within their own culture. Um, and it's just really fascinating because, I mean, as a Latina, I understand what that's all about. And no one recognized that. So I really enjoy seeing how marginalized groups, how we respond to Gothic, and how it fills a really important void in fiction for us, whether it's queer writers or people of color like myself. It's just really nice to see that like the response that got, or the home that Gothic provides for us is just really spectacular.
And that was the Cursed House.
Oh, yes, yes.
This
This Cursed House, and it's by Del Sandine.
this Cursed House. Okay, I'm
Yeah.
writing this one down just in
This
case.
one will be out in October, so just in time for all the fun fall Halloween stuff.
Oh
New
boy,
Orleans, ghosts. Oh
perfect.
my gosh, I'm in. Do you mind if I take a quick sip of water?
I should do some talking, give you a break here. I kind of enjoyed, I very much enjoyed, that's not a good way to say it. I really enjoyed Kelsey James's Secrets of Rosebriar Hall. Oh, you got it too. Okay.
That was literally the next one. I want to hear your take on it. Yes,
Well,
yes.
I I I spoke about this yesterday when I did the other interview with the other off people on books that were coming. And one of the reasons that caught my attention was that this is particularly crisply paced for a Gothic. A lot of Gothics start off kind of slow because they're building this, they're building the atmosphere, and it takes some words to do that. And I get that. But I'm kind of an impatient reader. So I really appreciate someone who can do that, whip the story right along. And this does that without sacrificing any of the atmosphere and the suspense. So this is one of those classic married the wrong man. It's and it's a perfect version of the gaslighting story. Is she being gaslighted?
I also know that if you like Rebecca, you'll probably like this as well. I know that they comped this to Gaslight, the movie and everything, but I know I love I mean, kind of going back to things that we love about Gothic through time is like she's throwing the party to try to, convince others basically that she's worthy of being the bride. And what I find really fascinating, both about the other bride story and this one, and one of the reasons why brides are one of my favorite tropes, as in here, um or what character types, I guess, not really tropes, but is that they're on the precipice of a life change. And if it's a bride that is a ghost in the house, then she never got to get there. If it's a bride who's the main character and is facing all of these things, then she may be a ghost in the future. We don't know. And so, but it's just this point of that it's a precipice, right? And it's so you think of like, and I have an art history degree, so I have to use it sometimes. If I'm not making a living at it, I need to reference it. So you have like Leonardo da Vinci's Sistine Chapel ceiling and the famous painting where the fingers are almost touching. God's about to give Adam the goods, but they're not quite there. And so it's this perpetual tension that's never resolved. And that's what I get with brides in these Gothic stories. So that's why when they're one of my favorite things. So I'm
I think you've
so
hit,
excited about this book too.
yeah, I think you've hit a nail on the head there. I hadn't thought about that, but that does explain the appeal. She's on the cusp of change, and which way is it going to go? Yeah.
Is she going to be a ghost, or is she going to stop like the madness of being, of what happens to brides in this house? So, um, one of the books I have next, or actually the book I have next, is called Island Witch. And this one has been out a couple of months, but I'm talking about it now so that I can make sure that there's more eyes on it, because there's so many books that come out every week. And sometimes I think we don't hear as much about others. But I want to show you this gorgeous cover. Look at this. Is that beautiful? Look at that
Yeah, yeah.
color. Ah, my gosh. Amanda Jayatisa. And this one is definitely for fans of like the Hacienda. So if
Oh
people
yeah.
like the Hacienda, yeah, and
I love that
it's
one.
not just the cover, right?
Yeah.
There's definitely some appeal too. Inspired by the Sri Lankan folklore she heard whispered in the night as a child, award-winning author Amanda Jayatisa brings us Island Witch, a bone-chilling thriller perfect for fans of feminist myth retellings and historical supernatural suspense like the Hacienda. This gothic tinge story takes us to 19th century Sri Lanka, which I mean, I love some 19th century Sri Lanka, where the daughter of a traditional demon priest, relentlessly bullied by peers and accused of witchcraft herself, tries to solve the mysterious attacks that have been terrorizing her coastal village. So they actually need her skills. but because of like colonialism and everything else, she's also accused of witchcraft and demonized and all these things, but they need her skills. So, isn't that always the way? um Gorgeous setting, gorgeous storytelling. I think that's a really exciting book, and I think a lot of people would really enjoy it. So,
Okay, and that's the witch,
Island Witch.
the island witch.
Yeah.
Got it. Okay.
So pretty. Oh my gosh. I'm a sucker for a good book cover, and people will sometimes say, well, they're not important, but they are.
They
They
are.
are. They
Absolutely.
do.
Yeah. I don't, no one in the business would argue with you on that one.
Well, and as a librarian, and I was a bookseller while I was in graduate school to be a librarian. And I will say that they are absolutely one of the biggest reasons why people pick up a book.
Oh,
And that
yeah.
is because the image on the cover, for everyone listening, is there to do the work for the author who isn't there to do it themselves. It's there to talk about the book, to make you excited about the book when the author isn't there to do it. So it has a job. So,
And I think what it does is it's like a one frame picture, a
yes.
photograph, a trailer, a little mini trailer of the book.
I like that. A mini trailer. That's so good.
That's what it has to do. If a good one, a good cover does that.
Yeah. Yeah. The next one I'm going to talk about is I can talk about both of her books, but the one that's out is called Daughters of Block Island. And I'll talk about that one after I talk about the one that's coming out, because while you're waiting, you can read Daughters of Block Island. But the one that's coming out, get ready, y'all. It's Poe adjacent. It's called
Oh, oh,
Beneath.
adjacent. I love
Yeah.
when does this word adjacent become so it's perfect. I love it. It's a co-adjacent. Okay.
It's Beneath the Poet's House. And it's by Krista Carmen, who just won the Stoker Award for Best Debut for Daughters of Block Island. So I am very excited about Beneath the Poet's House. That comes out in December. So it's a while away, but while you're waiting for that one and pre-ordering it and asking your library for it, you can read Daughters of Block Island, and I'll tell you about both. Um, so Beneath the Poet's House, for a grieving writer, the secrets of the past and present converge in a novel of gripping psychological suspense from the author of Daughters of Block Island. Unmoored by her husband's death and suffering from writer's block, novelist novelist Saoirse White moves to Providence and into the historic home of Sarah Helen Whitman, the 19th century poet and spiritualist once courted by Edgar Allan Poe. Saoirse's certain she'll find inspiration in the quiet rooms as well as in the tucked away rose garden and forgotten cemetery at the back of the property.
There's always how they forget those cemeteries.
But who doesn't love, oh, I bought a house and there's a cemetery? um, she's immediately welcomed by an effusive trio of transcendentalists, gotta love that, obsessed with Whitman, the house, and Whitman's mystic beliefs. Saoirse, emerging from grief and loneliness, welcomes the idea of new friends taking her mind off the past, even as they hope to summon it. When she meets Emmett Powell, a charismatic and charming prize-winning author, Saoirse thinks she's finally turned a corner. Emboldened by new romance, Saoirse begins to write again, and through her writing, rediscover herself. But as old fears return, she finds nothing about her new life is what it seems. And a secret she's tried so hard to bury may not be the only thing that comes back to haunt her. So, I'm here for it, Jayne.
I think I am too. I'll put that one on the list. Yet
Oh my
another.
gosh. I mean, the cover is on Goodreads and everything. I just don't have the art yet, so I can't hold it up for you, but definitely take a look for that book. Beneath the Poet's House by Krista Carmen.
And
Um,
in the meantime, the
Daughters of Block Island is available to you. Now, listen, I was an only child and I love books with sisters because I'm fascinated. So that's what this has for you. And sisters that have been separated their whole lives. I mean, yes.
separated
So,
birth, yeah, that happens
yeah,
to everybody.
because as an only child, I used to wonder, like, is there someone I don't know out there, that's part of me, and blah, blah, blah. I had twin aunts, identical twin aunts. So I just kind of would
Imagined it.
I
Yeah.
think I wished for it, you know.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, and so Krista just won the Bram Stoker Award for Best Debut for this one, The Daughters of Block Island. And this ingenious and subversive twist on the classic Gothic novel,
Hmm.
the mysterious past of an island mansion, you love an island mansion, lures sisters into a spider web of scandal, secrets, and murder. All the things we love in a Gothic. Two sisters, strangers since birth, yet bound by family secrets, are caught up in a century-old mystery on an isolated island. After arriving on Block Island to find her birth mother, Blake Bronson becomes convinced she's the heroine of a Gothic novel, the kind that's allowed her intermittent escape from a traumatic childhood. How else to explain the torrential rain, the salt-worn mansion known as White Hall, and the restless ghost purported to haunt its halls? Well, of course, I would be a heroine in a Gothic novel, right? But before Blake can discern the novel's ending, she's found dead, murdered in a clawfoot tub. The proprietress of Whitehall stands accused. Summoned by a letter sent from Blake before she died, Talia Mills returns to the island she swore she'd left for good. She finds that Blake wasn't the first to die at Whitehall under suspicious circumstances. Talia must uncover the real reason for Blake's demise. Oh, I love it. Before the forces conspiring to keep Block Island secrets dead and buried rise up to consume her. I love the language. All the things. It has all the things. So,
Sounds like another one for my list.
oh my gosh. Well, yeah. And I mean, it's a really big deal to win that award. I mean, there's so many wonderful new debuts every single year. And there was a great bunch of people, all of which were deserving. But, I'm just really happy for Krista. And, I'm so excited about this next book, to the Poe adjacent novel. So while you're waiting for that one, you can read Daughters of Black Island.
Okay, got it.
So you ready for some horror?
Yeah.
Now, keep in mind, like I said, guys, these are books that are smart and feminist and funny and have spectacular covers that are doing the exact work they should be doing. And I think you'll see what I mean when I've talked to Rachel Harrison, who's the next one I'm going to talk about a number of times on the show. You can, follow her on social. She's a whole lot of fun. Brace yourself. This is the greatest cover, James.
Okay.
So this is called So Thirsty. It's Thelma and Louise with vampires. Look, look at that glass and look at this right here.
That is so clever. Who's
I
now the
know.
publisher on that one is
Berkeley.
Berkeley. Yeah.
Yeah. Of course it's Berkeley, right? That they have such good covers. This one is coming out in September 10th. She's usually out a new one every fall. So I've already read this one. I highlighted several passages. I was text messaging her going, this is doing so much work. It feels, you know, it's funny because she has a way of being super accessible at the same time that her words, while being super accessible, are doing a lot of work. There's layers to everything she does, and it's brilliant. I love Rachel's books. She's very, very popular for a reason. Thelma and Louise with vampires. I mean, so thirsty.
Love it.
Yeah.
Got it down.
Also, just for anybody who's listening, and I don't think that anybody who's following Jayne is going to be surprised by sex on the page, but that's the first time she really did that. And it's vampires, so you kind of have to. But, um, there's also vampires in the next one, but there's sort of vampire-esque zombie creatures. But this is another magnificent cover, and you're gonna love it. Bless Your Heart by Lindy Ryan.
Look laughing already. Yeah.
Look at the pearls. These are Texas. This is a Texas matriarchy. So it's 4 generations of Texas women. That's why it's called Bless Your Heart. Four generations of Texas women who are morticians. They're funeral directors, and they do regular funerals for the town, but they also specialize in putting down these kind of vampire-esque zombie creatures that are in this book, and they're the only ones who know how to do it and have the power to do it. So it's a great grandmother, a grandmother, a mother, and a daughter. And it is, if you love a matriarchy, if you love the tongue-in-cheek, like little adorable things with pearls, you get the vibes that are in here. But I love it. I mean, and it's such a empowering feminist book too. Lindy wrote this book as a grief exercise to more like she mourned her grandmother. Her grandmother died, and her therapist was like, why don't you write a book that will kind of help you through this? And she came up with this amazing book with a great sense of humor that shows these magnificent women of all these ages. And I'm just like,
Yeah.
I'm ready for the next one, which she's already got pictures for the cover on the next one. So even though that one just came out. So
That does sound good.
yeah, no,
They all
it's a
do. They
whole
all
lot
do.
of fun. If you want, it's a good time. It's a real good time. So those are the books I brought to talk about with you today. I think I went through them quickly.
Well, it was a fabulous chat. I really appreciate this. We're going to have to do this on a regular basis because these
Yeah.
more books are always on the way. So, and
Thank you so much for having me. This was a good time.
And once again, for those of you who are watching, my guest today was Agatha Andrews, and she is the face, the voice of the She Wore Black podcast. And you can find She Wore Black online almost everywhere. In fact, there's a link to their Facebook page on my Facebook page. So,
Oh, yay. Thank you. That's true.
maybe you need to start. Yeah. And also on my Instagram page, I linked to you there. So if you
That sounds
get
great.
her, remember me and you can find her.
And that's where I usually am anyway, is Instagram and Facebook. Like those are my speed. So,
Well, thank you for everything you're doing for my favorite genre.
oh, thank you.
I just love this genre and the adjacent genres. Well, because it is a genre that can incorporate a lot of elements from other genres. It has a lot of fluidity to it, or so. I don't know. It's very,
Absolutely.
yeah, it's very fresh because you can keep adding to it and taking things from it. It's just one of those great genres. So
There's so much range, whether it's Charles Dickens writing about Christmas ghosts, or, the women running from houses in the 70s, or Isabel Cañas and the Hacienda. I mean, there's just so many possibilities. I love it too.
yeah, well, we share that love. So
Thank you so much.
thank you, Agatha, and all the best. And I will watch or listen to the podcast.
Thank y'all.